Hello, I'm Barry Silverberg, Director of the Center for Nonprofit Studies at Austin Community College. Welcome to Civil Society, where we explore issues affecting our communal well-being through a nonprofit lens. We're a proud partner of ACC TV. My guest today is Earl Maxwell. Soon to retire as Chief Executive Officer of St. David's Foundation, he has been at the center of many significant economic and philanthropic ventures for more years than he probably wants to remember. Prior to joining the foundation in 2007, Earl was the leading partner of Maxwell Locke and Ritter, Austin's largest accounting and consulting firm. Earl's experience includes over 31 years in public accounting. He's the author of Service, Prosperity, and Sanity. I need not recount his many achievements for you to quickly grasp the measure of Earl Maxwell, a true community and philanthropic visionary whose Herculean energy, humility, and gentle, inclusive demeanor embody a we can do it together approach from which we have all benefited. Earl, you and I have known each other for over 20 years. It's been a pleasure for me, and I hope it's been a pleasure for you. My first question to you is, aside from your current position, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, what has been the greatest pleasure, achievement that you're proudest of in your long career as a community leader?
Well, Barry, you probably don't remember this, but you're a part of the story I'm about to tell. And in 2003 or 4, I had just agreed to become the chairman of the Corporate Development Council for the Long Center. And you and I were meeting about something. And I walked into your office, and you were sitting behind your desk, and the Austin Business Journal had written a front page article about my agreement to help the Long Center. And you tossed the paper across the desk and said, I wanted you to know that I recognize the fact that you must be a strong believer in the resurrection to have taken this on. And the beautiful part of that story is, yes, the Long Center had several false starts and stops up to that point. But 4 years after that meeting, we had raised tens of millions of dollars, and the Long Center got built just in the nick of time because it opened just before the crash of 2008. Yeah. So if we'd waited another year, who knows? But from a tangible standpoint, every time we go to a performance in the Long Center, I think about those 4 years and the excitement leading up to finally resurrecting the Long Center.
That was a fight.
It was a fight.
Yeah, I remember that well.
But a fight worth fighting.
So you're well known in the community. You've been, as I said, a leader for many, many years. What would you say to somebody coming up as a philanthropic volunteer leader? What advice would you give them? What is it that you would have liked to have known when you first started, when you were youngin' at Deloitte? Was that where you were? Deloitte and Touche.
I think I would tell a young person who wants to become involved in the community first to follow your passion and do something you really believe in, because you can't fake it. And if you're not doing something that you really believe in, you'll burn out pretty quickly. The second thing I would tell any young person about community building is that community building is really hard work, and it's messy work. And you will live through battles in the community. You'll come away from some of those battles scarred, but that's just the nature of community building. It's much more messy than most people think.
Doing good isn't easy, is it?
It is not. And one of my favorite sayings is, no good deed goes unpunished.
Yep.
And so, but it's still worth doing. So I would give that advice in a very encouraging way.
Good. So let's deal with what you're currently involved in. So you've been the head of the St. David's Foundation for
12 years.
By God, that's a long time. And that's after you came out of your retirement to take that on, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah. So what goes on next? What's the third retirement look like? What organization are you gonna run for your third retirement?
I don't think I'll run an organization. I've done that really over a 42-year period, and I have the first year planned. but it doesn't involve running another nonprofit.
That was somewhat humorous.
And it's going to involve some fishing. I'm going to build a 18-foot wooden skiff, a Farley boat in Port Aransas.
Cool.
And I have 2 or 3 books in mind. And I'll touch on one of those books later in the interview.
Good. When I think of Earl Maxwell, or I see your name in the paper, which I see a lot, what comes to my mind is ethical, visionary. What do you think are the qualities that are necessary for an effective leader in the community?
Well, my favorite description of leadership is found in the book Good to Great by Jim Collins. And there's a chapter in that book called Level 5 Leadership,
right.
And he responds to the question you've asked, but he leads that conversation with the idea of humility, and that good leaders are humble, and good leaders are servant leaders. Good leaders give credit to others when things go well, and they take blame themselves when things don't go so well. And so I really like the idea of level 5 leadership. When I went to St. David's Foundation, there was not a job description for the CEO. So I got to write my own job description.
Right.
And what I did is I just wrote my job description along each of the 5 or 6 principles of leadership that Collins writes about.
Yeah. He started, before he wrote the book, he wrote a couple of articles in the Harvard Business Journal, Harvard Business Review, exactly on level 5 of leadership. So who are your models? Who are the people that either before you, I know it's kind of dangerous if you talk about people who are leaders with you, but who are your models? Who are the people that helped you see or helped you realize how you wanted to be a leader?
Well, some of my early bosses in Deloitte certainly shaped me, and the one who comes to mind is Bob Cruikshank. He was the managing partner of the Houston office and very involved in the community. The first CPA in Houston to chair the Chamber of Commerce, the first CPA to chair the National Board of the American Heart Association. He was involved in politics. He was all over the community. He was the face of the firm in Houston. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't have a close relationship with Cruikshank, but I observed him for the 14 years I was at Deloitte, and he had a profound influence in me reaching beyond the walls of a CPA firm and stepping into community life and community building. Currently, the people that are really unsung heroes that I really like to watch and see how they operate in the community are people like Bobby Jenkins, Susan Dawson, mm-hmm. Clark Heydrich. And there are many others, and it's always dangerous. And I went ahead and I included...
You didn't include me.
And Barry Silverberg.
No, just kidding.
And I will say, being on this show is the greatest honor I've received since graduating from kindergarten.
Thank you.
Every other guest might say that.
So what do you wish you'd known before you got started? You mentioned before that it was difficult, it's hard to do good. What else would you have liked to have known?
I think I'd like to have known just how difficult it can be. And how do you work your way through those difficult situations? How do you keep from burning bridges? It's one of my favorite philosophies. What I've always told our 2 sons is, whatever you do is as you're leaving a relationship or you're leaving a difficult situation, leave it in such a way that you don't burn any of those bridges.
Yeah. Because
at some point, you'll intersect with those people again.
That's true.
And so it's good business not to burn any bridges. The other thing I tell people is, if you have burnt a bridge, and most often in our society, that is often an ex-husband or wife, and often it's a father-son relationship. And what I really encourage people to do is, if you have unreconciled differences with people who at one time were very important to your life, reconcile those differences before it's too late.
Yeah, that's good advice, real good advice. So talk a little bit about how you feel you've had an impact with the St. David's Community Foundation. I mean, you've changed largely due to you and the foundation, given its size and vision, has significantly changed the philanthropic environment in Austin. From your perspective, as the changer.
Well, the interesting part of that conversation is Neil Kasurik, my predecessor at the foundation and the founding CEO of the foundation, was my primary mentor in the community.
Oh, really?
And a very close friend. He and his family were clients of our CPA firm, but I really got to know him dating all the way back to my days in Austin Adopt-A-School, because education was his great passion. Now, he ended up in healthcare, but education, he believed, was the great equalizer.
He was an engineer, correct?
He was an engineer and had a PhD in physics, I believe. I know he was a doctor. Very smart guy, but a wonderful community builder. So once I left Houston, where I talked about Bob Cruikshank, then Neil Kasurik became my next community mentor until his passing in 2004.
Right.
And then I was already on the executive committee, which served as the search committee for Neil's successor. And but I did not apply for the job at the time because I was not ready yet to leave the accounting firm. And but I did participate in that and selected his successor. But actually, for all the years that I followed Neil around, Neil died when he was 67. His parents lived to both be 98. I thought he had another 30 or 35 years in him. I never imagined that I'd be sitting in his seat at the foundation. And furthermore, I never imagined that I'd be sitting at the seat at a time where we grew the foundation from a budget of $7 million to $90 million. And so sometimes, I mean, you just can't predict that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't create any of that. I just was there and led the organization through that growth and built the infrastructure that's required. And when I was on the board, the budget was $2.5 million. So this organization has really grown at a pace that very few nonprofits ever get to experience. And I've had the honor of leading that transformation. And most importantly, it's transformed and helped a lot of lives, tens of thousands of people that you and I will never meet.
That's right. So if you were to epitomize or say in a few words what the mission of the foundation is, not how it operates, but what is its mission?
The vision or mission, however you want to look at it, is to help Austin and Central Texas become the healthiest community in the world.
That's pretty
It's
non-ambitious.
It's pretty ambitious. And actually, the St. David's healthcare system that we're a part of has a very similar vision themselves. So we're in lockstep on that. And the way I like to describe that is usually for about 80% of the people in the room, or 80% of the people in Austin, they're already living in the healthiest community in the world because they have good insurance and they have access to health care and they have access to, they live in a nice neighborhood and people are running and jogging in front of their house at all hours of the day. They're within close proximity to a nice grocery store and parks, but 20% of the people don't have any of those things. And so the work of the foundation focuses on the people who need that help but can't afford to pay the help for the help.
And we can't forget about that, for sure. So you mentioned, you gave me a teaser before that you were going to talk about later in the show. This is later in the show. What's the books you're working on?
Oh, I'd forgotten. Well, the book that I'll talk about is going to be the first thing I write after we get back from Australia and New Zealand, and after I start,
Great places.
and after I start building my boat. But I am simply going to write a book about a lifetime of fishing experiences, because fishing has been such an integral part of my life. It's what I really look forward to doing most of the time. And so I have already outlined fishing stories that I remember from the first fish I caught at either 3 or 4 until last weekend when my nieces caught a 38-pound black drum in the canals right in front of our house.
Wow.
So it's going to be fishing stories from 3 or 4 to 66.
Should be interesting.
And probably some fishing lies in there too, because fishermen do lie. But it's ethically acceptable in the fishing world.
Oh, I see.
So
it's relative.
That's a book for fun. It's going to be probably read by no one other than close friends and family and fishing buddies. But I'm also thinking about tying each of those stories into a lesson on leadership. And if I'm able to do that, then it may have a broader appeal. Yep. And the other two,
you're going to keep them
wait to
secret.
tell you.
All right.
Well, the second one relates exactly to what you do every day and have been doing at the center at ACC. And the title might be something like, "So You Think You Want to Be a Nonprofit CEO?"
That would be a great book.
And I will write about the lessons learned in a 12-year transition from the business community to the nonprofit community. And once you're in the nonprofit world, what you'll learn, what I learned, is that 31 years of serving on nonprofit boards did not prepare me to work for one.
Yep, it's different entirely.
Yeah.
So you bring me to a key question. So what do you see as the future of the philanthropic venture in Austin? During your time, Austin has grown enormously. You've been a major part of causing that growth in your business and your philanthropic activity. Where are we going as we become more sophisticated in our philanthropy and move forward?
I think Austin will continue to mature. I moved here in 1986, 33 years ago. And right now, if you pulled out the book of lists from the Austin Business Journal, where they list the top 25 philanthropic organizations, I bet there weren't more than 3 of them that are now listed who were there 33 years ago. RGK Foundation and a couple of others.
Yeah.
But the St. David's Foundation would not have been on that list. Michael and Susan Dell had probably not started their foundation at that point in time. So 12 or 13 years ago, when I Live Here, I Give Here was created by Patsy Woods Martin, and they did their first survey that showed of the top 50 cities in the country, Austin wasn't ranked in terms of philanthropic giving where we wanted it to be ranked. I don't remember what the ranking was, but it was somewhere between 40 and 50 of the top 50. And so I Live Here, I Give Here seized that opportunity and have expanded to the idea of Amplify Austin and have really amplified the philanthropic community. And so it's growing, and now I don't know what our ranking is, but it's a lot better than 50. Sure. So we're maturing, and our foundations are more and more collaborating, getting together, and we now have corporate types of foundations moving into Austin and having big footprints here that we didn't even think about 30 years ago.
Or 15 years ago. Yeah.
Right. Well, 15 years ago, was Google a company? Was Amazon a company? You know, I don't know. If they were, they weren't household words.
We're getting old, Earl.
But it's been a good run, and I hope you'd agree from your standpoint.
Yep. Yep.
Because when you and I first met, you were coming off the battle around the Jewish Community Center.
That's right.
That eventually became a wonderful thing, similar to my experience at the Long Center. So.
And I didn't believe in resurrection.
I left that out of the story.
Well, last thing, because
It has been an ecumenical friendship.
That's right, it has been. It really has. And you've been very supportive of me and my career, and I appreciate that. Last question. So, if somebody didn't know Earl Maxwell in 1 minute, how would you want to be introduced?
I think I'd want to be introduced as the father of 2 sons who's been married to their mother for 45 years. I married my trophy wife the first time, and we're still married. And someone who was trained as a CPA, accountant, and always was actively involved in the community and tried to do the best I could do.
I think you've accomplished it. Earl, thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you very much.
It has been an honor.
Well, thank you. Thank you for watching Civil Society, and thank you to ACC TV for producing this show. You can read more about Earl Maxwell, find links to the subject we discussed today, and view previous episodes of Civil Society at nonprofitaustin.org. Thank you for joining us today.